start the discussion right now. This is the destruction of the game industry as you know it. We are Alter Confusion. That's my song I had to put it out there. Alter Confusion is basically a independent news and review website. We try to do as many reviews as possible. It's usually me who does the reviews. But we're trying to put more importance on the indie games than the AAA titles. AAA titles, you got 30,000 websites out there talking about the latest Call of Duty, Madden, whatever. But the independent games are the ones who should get, a lot of love because they're actually unique and creative because publishers don't want to risk original IPs. So, let me skip just one. Okay, so today we're talking about the destruction of the game industry as we know it. Okay, let me say one thing first. The game industry is not going away, but it has to change. The reason why I say it has to change is, well, AAA titles are just remakes. You got the publishers basically continuing to hold the developers by the cojones, and things got to change. We need a breath of fresh life, and I think the way that it's going to happen is that we're going to see a push towards digital content, where we're no longer going to have to go to that brick and mortar store. We're no longer going to have to go to GameStop. Unfortunately, that probably also means that there's not going to be used games. So I know a lot of people are really crushed about that. I know that Microsoft and Sony, after Microsoft retracted their previous statement, are going to allow used games on their system.
I mean, I honestly don't know what I'm going to do come the next generation of consoles because all my games I borrow from him. I don't have as much money as him, so I borrow most of my games from him. What am I going to do if I have to start paying the $35 or $40 per borrow?
Right. Well, one of the things that you have to understand right off the bat is that Microsoft and PlayStation, come on, you can come in. We're just chit-chatting away, man.
Let me get some data.
All right, go for it. The one thing that you have to understand is that Microsoft and Sony have said they're going to allow used games. They're not going to charge you for it. The fine print says that the publisher of the games can dictate if there's going to be a fee for you to play your game on another console. So chances are, Madden, you're probably going to have to pay a pretty penny. Or Call of Duty, you're probably going to have to pay a pretty penny. But
I mean, that personally bothers me because I feel once you buy a game, you own the game and you can do whatever you would like to do with the game, but the publishers feel that the only thing you're buying is the CD or the DVD, whatever it comes on, and the game themselves is still owned by them.
You can actually thank Bill Gates for this. Bill Gates came up with the brilliant idea that he's going to give you a license to utilize the software that he's providing you with. You don't own the software, you own the right to utilize the software. And so that, of course, trickled down all the way to video games. So, why are we saying that the destruction of the game industry is happening? Well, things are changing. You have a shit ton of platforms, pardon my language, but you have a shit ton of platforms out there now. You no longer just have a Nintendo or a Sega or an Atari or a Neo Geo if you were making money. But now you have, not only do you have the heavy hitters, the Microsofts and the Sonys and to an extent the Nintendos, though I think that Nintendo is basically trying to find the quickest way to leave the console market. This past April, when the sales results came out for the Wii U versus the Wii, this past April, the Wii outsold the Wii U. And I'm not talking about overall, I mean that exact month, the Wii outsold the Wii U. So I have a very bad feeling that Nintendo's probably going to be without a console at the end of this iteration, or perhaps even sooner. But for some reason, they are the only handheld device creators that can make just a game console and have it succeed. It's probably has something to do with Pokemon, but. So as I said, there's a ton of platforms out there. There's the Xbox, there's the PlayStation, then of course you have the Xbox Live Arcade, you've got the PlayStation Network, you've got the
Recent-
Ouya now.
yeah.
You got iOS, you've got Android, PC of course. And the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is that the consoles want to push for digital distribution simply because you're cutting out a huge chunk of the fees that you're having to deal with. If let's say that you work for a company, let's say Bubble Studios, and Bubble Studios has Super Massacre 3 on store shelves tomorrow. As a company, you are paying to rent space on every single brick and mortar store. So if you go into a GameStop and you see 4 Call of Duties, they've rented those 4 spots. They're paying a weekly fee to put those games on those shelves. So what happens is you buy the game. Someone comes in and buys the game. GameStop takes an immediate 20% of that profit. 80% goes to the publisher. The publisher then takes 70% of that 80%, keeps it for itself, and the developers get 30%. You want to know why developers keep dropping like flies? It's because they don't see any of the money, and used game sales are mostly to blame. Because on a used game sale, GameStop pockets 100%. No one else sees any of that money. That's why GameStop is brilliant for doing their used game sales. And of course, that's why Microsoft and Sony first said, we don't want to do it anymore. Now, of course, if they actually stood up and implemented this process, you would not only be killing the used game market, but you'd also be killing the rental game market. GameFly would be dead the very next day, which would be very sad for me because that's where I get the majority of my AAA titles, because we don't get free stuff from big name companies. We only get it from small companies. So if we want to play, I don't play Call of Duty, but I don't play Final Fantasy anymore.
You play Madden still, NCAA.
Okay, fine, whatever. I play that. But anyways, man, you sidetracked.
I know I sidetracked you.
Okay, brick and mortar. Okay, so digital distribution means that one, used game sales, you cut that out. Now the publishers are getting a huge chunk of the money. They're getting that full 100%, and then that 30% gets a little bit bigger for the developer. Now the beautiful thing about digital distribution system is that it is actually possible for a developer to release a game without the help of a publisher. Yes, it costs an arm and a leg, and it's probably going to be bite-sized, but that's the beauty of the Android platform and the iOS platform. And Xbox Live Arcade, with the Indie Arcade and PlayStation Network. They can completely take the publishers out. And also with digital distribution, you will see that you don't need to have all those posters and huge marketing cutouts. And you don't have to depend on the publisher paying for renting the space in a brick and mortar store. So it's a little bit easier for the developer, but still they needed financial backing. Now, when we did this panel at MomoCon this year, I said that Kickstarter was a phenomenal idea to get the games out the door, and I'm going to retract that. The only reason I retract that is that I think that not all games will succeed on Kickstarter, simply because when you have a bigger name title, like Double Fine Adventures, or basically anything by Double Fine, they're going to set the bar at $400,000 or $500,000. And they're going to get it. But not only are they going to get it, but they're going to get like 5, 6, 7 times that amount. When they did Double Fine Adventures, they asked for $400,000. They got $3.3 million. So because they overshot their goals so much, they decided to add characters, new worlds, new storyline, all this extra stuff. And guess what? The game was supposed to come out this year. It's not going to make it this year. It's going to make it next year, sort of. An alpha build will be ready in 2014. Why? They ran out of money. The problem is that Kickstarter, if you hit your mark of, let's say that for some reason, let's say $400,000, if you hit it smack dab on the dot, that's what you've budgeted for. You're probably going to go slightly over, but you know what you're capable of. When you overshoot and you start trying to entice people to get more, those stretch goals, you start saying, you start, oh, well, since we got this money, let's do this, and let's do that, let's do this. And the financial economics basically go out the window because you get so excited because of that extra flow of money. And as a result, chances are your game's never going to see the light of day, or if it is, it's not going to be for a long time. Now, this unfortunately has given birth to a very dangerous practice, and that is called early access. Steam does it for a couple of the companies, where you can put your alpha build of a game up on their network, and an individual can pay the full price or a discounted fee, and they'll be able to play through all the alpha builds, all the beta builds, all that stuff. What they're doing is the companies run out of money, so they need to have that extra flow of cash since they don't have a publisher. Because with a publisher, that's the one benefit to having a publisher, is that if you overshoot, you can go to your publisher and he'll probably meet you halfway or a quarter of the way, and they'll at least give you some money. But when you have no publisher, you've got nobody to fall back on if you overshoot.
Well, once you overshoot and you have no money, the game is dead. And I think when you start talking about changing in the game industry, people saw Kickstarter as a great way to raise money. And with stories like this, where companies aren't putting out their product, no one's going to want to invest their money into a product that you may not see. So really, publishers are always going to be there, but they're going to have to start being a little bit smarter about how they're distributed.
Well, I think publishers are going to have to change, simply because eventually we are going to go to a digital format, and publishers want money. EA loves money. Activision loves money. And in order to continue to stay up on top, they're going to have to change things. Now, of course, Microsoft basically gave every single publisher the secret handshake, or showed them the secret handshake and said, we got your back. If you are to release a game on the Xbox One system, that's the new console coming out for Xbox, you have to have a publisher. And it has to be recognized by Microsoft. It can't be like, I created the game, and all of a sudden, Jesse's a publisher, and so he backs my game. They won't allow that. You have to, I don't know the exact process of becoming an official recognized publisher, but you're gonna have to do that. Now, Sony has basically said, you can put your game out, whatever. But I'm sure there's probably some kind of gatekeeping source or system in place as well. Now, I know a lot of people are pissed off because of the fact that you have to have a publisher for the Xbox Live Arcade for Xbox One. But here's the beauty of it. If you have publishers that are acting as gatekeepers, the shovelware that flooded the shit out of the Wii right off the bat will not happen. You will not, it will be a lot more manageable to find those really amazing games on the system without having to go through 17, it's not Angry Birds, but it is Angry Birds. It's pirates that fly through, being shot out of a ballista, and they don't knock down sticks, they knock out zombies that are stuck, in patterns that look exactly like Angry Birds, but it's not. So I think you see a lot of creative ideas coming off that, and of course the iOS platform, Apple has now instituted that rule of if it's way too close to something that's already on the system, they won't accept it. That's both amazing and unfortunate because ironically some of the copies or copycats are better than the original game. And then of course you have Android, which I think is just like a free-for-all. I think you just literally throw whatever you want on there and then you try to convince people to get it. And then of course you have the Ouya, which is the new Android gaming device that's digital only. From my understanding, you can basically set the price point for $2 or free all the way up to $15. I mean, that's the most expensive I've seen. But that's the other thing. I think that because of the continuing high expenses of the consoles and whatnot, Android devices, iOS devices that have the functionality of being your multimedia device, where you have the ability to listen to music, watch movies, play games, and then those games are like, they might be short, or hell, they might be long, they might be deceptively long, but they're only costing you like $5 versus $60, and then you're stuck with that game. beautiful example is an original Xbox game called State. State, which was kind of like a 3D world, kind of like Smash Brothers-ish game that my friends and I tried for 5 hours, and then we'll never touch again because it was so poorly done. But then you're stuck with that game. But sure, you can sell it back for, let's see, a $60 game at GameStop that's not really popular. You probably get $5 for it. So, but
I'm not quite sure where you're going with that one. Because I don't know that game myself. But
don't worry about that. Keep going.
But really, platforms are changing. Nintendo really is going away. And I really feel with this new onset of next-gen systems, there's the push towards, the gamers have less control over their games that they buy. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that they're relying not just them being gaming systems, but they're your entertainment systems. They do your internet searches for you through your television. They can do your TV watching through your televisions. And so now your console is a small fraction of video gaming. And so people are trying to find new ways to put out their video games in other platforms, whether it's this, the phone, the Ouya, your iPads, whatever. The consoles are becoming a little bit more marginalized to just AAA titles as people find new routes to put out their games.
Well, to be honest with you, I think that it's kind of a disservice to call these systems consoles anymore. Because when you think console, you think, oh, hardcore gaming. I'm going to go there to play my games. This is more of a media-centric device. You're no longer just, turning on your 360 to play all your games. I have a huge-ass Xbox friends list, and I can tell you right off the bat, 80% of them are watching Hulu Plus, Netflix, ESPN. They've given up on games simply because, one, they don't have the money because the games aren't getting cheaper, and two, it's just, instead of hopping on the computer, they can just, watch all their stuff through the TV, which is phenomenal. But to be honest with you, the only console out there that really deserves, or system out there that still deserves to be called a console is the Nintendo systems. But I just don't understand what Nintendo's doing with them. They're just so far behind the curve. And yes, the Wiimote was a phenomenal, innovative thing that unfortunately was seen as a gimmick. And then you got flooded by all those carnival games. And then you got the major publishers going, yeah, we're not going to try to remake our entire game for this console that's getting a smaller and smaller market because it's only a console. Whereas the Xbox and the PlayStation are becoming more and more, you can watch your movies, you can watch TV, surf the internet and whatnot. So, I don't know, it's weird. I do have to say one thing about the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 is going to sell for $300. No, $400, $399. And then of course the Xbox One is going to sell for $499. Right here, right now, I'm going to tell you that it's not that big of a gap. It's not a $100 difference because the Xbox One comes with the Kinect camera. The PlayStation 4 does not come with the PlayStation Eye, which I don't even know what the functionality of that's going to be because they've lost the stick with the bouncing ball on top of it for this iteration. That's what I call it. It's not the PlayStation Move, it's the bouncing ball on a stick. And that actually costs $60. So you're talking about a $40 difference, really. But I think right now is the time that, if given the right market with so many platforms out there, the potential of finding that diamond in the rough, that next amazing game from an indie developer is humongous. Because indies basically, first of all, it's make or break for them. They don't have anything to fall back on. They almost never have a publisher, so they're throwing all their passion into it. When you look at these AAA titles, I'm sorry, but it's a tired formula where they're pumping out the exact same thing. You've got all the Call of Duties, you've got Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3000, or whatever it's called now. You've got Assassin's Creed 500.
Yeah, and I'm upset about that because Assassin's Creed was one of those games that they put out every 3 years, 2 years, and now they're like, oh, let's kick one out every year.
Well, one of the problems with Assassin's Creed is it has a finite shelf life, and I think they've got so many ideas, they want to push it out as quickly as possible because the marketplace is kind of changing. And the other reason why they're pushing out the Assassin's Creed, I think it's Black Flag, so fast is because this is the best time for a publisher to put out a game. Why? Because you're making the game for 2 different systems. And people who have to have the game day one are going to buy on the Xbox 360. Then their friends are going to wait for the Xbox One. And then they're going to be suckered into getting the Xbox One. So that company just got $120 off of you for the same game, but you have to stay updated with your technology. Actually, Microsoft got away with $560.
Yeah.
But I'm a huge supporter of the indie games. At Alternate Fusion, we focus on the independent game scene. If an independent developer gives us something, we drop everything. It doesn't matter if it's Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, Madden, whatever. The independent games are where it's at. And I think that if we give enough support and show that innovation can still happen in this day and age, that it will force the publishers to recognize that they don't have to just make the Maddens or NCAA college football is done because of all the lawsuits and all the Call of Duties. I don't know. We need something better than cookie cutter games. And in order to do that, we need to be aware of the games that are out there that actually push the envelope. It might not be the most beautifully graphic, the graphics might not blow your mind away, but it could be something completely different, some weird mashup that you've never even thought of, that no one would have taken a chance on, but an independent developer did. And they could be the next Rovio, who's the guys behind Angry Birds. They could be the next, oh man, it just dropped out of my head. Supergiant Games, which is the company behind a game called Bastion, which is an amazing game. And they're coming out with their new one, which do what?
Transistor.
Yeah, Transistor, which I'm really sad that it's only going to be, I think they're only releasing it for one platform right now. They're not going to do the multi-platform thing, which saddens me greatly because those guys are awesome. I actually met them, phenomenal guys. They make games that they love to make. They don't make Barbie's Horse Adventure 5, which is a phenomenal game for young girls. I'm not saying, I also have a QA background, so when you start at a company, you usually play that game, the load screen of that game, 5 hours in a day. So there's nothing wrong with Barbie, but for me personally, I want something a little bit more unique.
I just don't know where we're headed with video games sometimes, because with the new platforms, we really see that I don't think they're focused necessarily on gaming. And I think a lot of the gaming is going towards these. I teach middle schoolers, and you can get a 13-year-old child to play almost anything. It's ridiculous. They are the most easily susceptible to crap that I've ever seen in my life. But most of their playing is this during my class. They play under their shirt. They think they're quirky. But they play junk. And these are also the same kids that are talking about the Call of Duties. And I cannot stand Call of Duty whatsoever because I'm completely a story person. I don't play online. I like a story in my games. And these kids are all like, I'm playing online, I'm playing online. And these new systems are focused online. They're focused more towards getting people to play even though they're in different parts of the world, which is all great. But the fact is, all those games are going to be $70, $80 eventually, $100. People are still going to buy them, and they're going to buy them every year. And we really need more independent titles to kind of bring those people back to say, we don't need to play all those games all the time. And actually, I feel if you have enough independent titles, you can keep the price down on some of those AAAs just because they're not going to be quite as popular if there's other games that are flooding the market.
You would have to have one hell of a game, something on the caliber or coverage of Angry Birds, but something that encompasses more. But you know, to be honest with you, I think, and Jesse talked about online gaming. I see the benefit of online gaming. I really do. You know, it's amazing to be able to play with your friend who's in Minnesota, which I do. I've got a buddy, and actually the missing guy involved in Confusion because we are a trio. He's in Minnesota, and it's fun to play against him. But you know what? The best multiplayer experiences you can ever have are in those two rooms: the board games and the pencil and paper RPGs. You want to have a true experience that's mind-blowing, face-to-face interaction where you're playing a board game, playing a card game. Yes, you've got your chat over the internet. And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons why I don't play online games, is because of the chat. Because I'm so sick and tired of a 12-year-old screaming at me in Halo or Gears of War saying I'm a wuss or this or that. You know, I guess for me personally, I'm the kind of person who kind of likes to meet the person I'm playing against or playing with, depending on the game. You know, if you're playing Arkham Horror or oh my gosh, what's one of the Last Night on Earth? Do what?
Pandemic.
Yeah, Pandemic. I've never beaten that game. We came so close. We came so close. And there's Forbidden Island, which is a phenomenal game. Unfortunately, out of the many times I've played, I've only once escaped successfully without the island sinking. If you've not played Forbidden Island, it's a phenomenal game. It's a game of random tiles where you have to collect artifact pieces that together, I think it's like you got to collect like 3 and or 5, and you change it into an actual artifact. And you and your team are trying to collect all the artifacts while this island is sinking every single turn, and then you got to get on the helicopter to win the game.
But now you're off topic.
But I'm sorry. But I'm just saying, the multiplayer experience, when you're doing it face to face, there's nothing like it. I mean, hell, even if I had the time or the place, because unfortunately I really don't have the time, and I had a couple of my buddies, definitely from back in my childhood, that would be LARPing.
Well, what I find interesting is this last group who created this RPG called The Last Book is promoting it as something new and different because they feel that tabletop games are now going too slow for this new generation of gamers who are always online. At least that's how they're promoting it to the sheet, because I missed the talk. I was out there trying to get more people in here, but they were all playing games next door, which is perfectly fine. But they're trying to promote saying that tabletop games is changing a little bit too because it doesn't move quite as fast, and maybe Charlie can elaborate. So it's not just video game, the industry that's changing, it's gaming in general because people want something even more fast-paced.
Well, it might not even be fast-paced, but one of the issues with any game medium is the fact that it's a closer to a more sure thing to do a tested format. Something that's tested and true. First-person shooters. There's a shit ton of them out there. You know why? Because people understand first-person shooter. Unless, of course, you're some crazy-ass company, and there are quite a few out there, who decide to choose their own key binding scheme that does not match up with WASDA or with the regular buttons on your controller. And they decide, you know, B, to talk to people sounds phenomenal. And then no one knows. And then, of course, that's the danger of making your own game. If you go off the beaten path, and when you have playtesters that are testing this thing for years, they get used to it, and then everyone's like, "Oh my God, it's phenomenal!" Because I know how to play it. I mean, yeah, I've been playing for 8 years, but man, it's awesome. When you show it to other people, they're gonna need 8 years to figure it out. But continue.
Well, I mean, just talking about that's one of the things that games get stuck into is they get cookie cutter after a while, and they get things. And I just finished The Last of Us this morning, and it played exactly, controller was almost exactly to the Naughty Dog's other game. Oh my God, I'm blanking on it. Uncharted. Because people can play it over and over again. Change is sometimes bad. And especially when it comes to controllers, you don't want to be fumbling around trying to figure out what buttons are which, so companies keep things in the same vein.
Well, with the controls, I mean, you don't need to innovate the controller. The controller has been innovated.
Nintendo innovated that in 1996.
Well, I know, but the controller, just utilize the controller how everyone else does it, but show content that actually means something. That's not, a lot of people have issues with Gears of War versus Halo, which, okay, fine, sure. Halo is a space marine game where you're in unknown space and you're killing aliens. Gears of War, you're a futuristic marine cog, whatever you want to call him, and there's monsters that I guess you can consider aliens if you really want to from the center of the earth. And they're like, oh, they just flipped it around and boom, new game. But there's way too, in my opinion, I think the first-person shooter has basically gone as far as it's going to go. I'm being very interested to see what Bungie's Destiny does, because that's supposed to be a, what's the word? Constantly alive world.
I don't know.
Persistent world, which is going to be awesome. And then, of course, because of the way the Xbox One works, if it continues to be always on, which a lot of people are scared of. First of all, let me tell you this right now. I know a lot of people out there who are petrified of the fact that the Xbox One's camera is always going to be on, and they're afraid that Microsoft's is going to be spying on you. Here's the problem, or here's the deal. Not to buy into the stereotype, but the stereotypical guy, the gamer guy who's sweaty, doesn't take showers, is walking around in white beater and underwear or less, is probably going to be the person sitting in front of that camera 99% of the time. I'm pretty sure Xbox is not going to see that, so they're not going to be spying on you. I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, they're going to see my girlfriend walk across my apartment. But then again, they basically flipped on that always-on concept. So we'll see what happens. Yes, sir.
Could some of this be, from a devil's advocate perspective, where those of us who talk on these panels and attended have been gaming for years?
Right.
We're now seeing a big widening of the gaming market.
Absolutely.
So could there be some of, to use a good phrase, get off my lawn, you're not playing the game the correct way? Because these people, they're not looking for the hardcore fix. They're not looking to play a 20-hour game.
Right.
The reason Angry Birds or any of the casual games have taken off is because it's microgaming. It's
right.
I've got time in line. I can play a little bit here and I'm done. I get a fulfilling experience about it. It's not what we grew up with and we were there for the formative values, but it's still a valid play experience.
Right.
And that explains also why you're saying Call of Duty, yeah, it's cookie cutter. They keep selling.
Right.
So you can't deny that there's a market demand for it.
Oh, absolutely. It's the concept of, like we said, what you already know is going to sell. I mean, if you know that it's already, if it's sold in the past, they're going to continue to basically grind it into the ground, whatever, until it no longer sells. And you're right. It is that concept of get off my lawn when it comes to the social versus the hardcore. Everybody is now basically a gamer thanks to Facebook, to iOS, to all these different platforms. And I know a lot of people have a hard time of going, oh no, Farmville, that's not really a game. It is a game. I hate to admit it, but it is a game. I'm guilty of only one Zynga game, and that's Coasterville 2, where I get to build my own theme park. Come on. But one of the big ways that a lot of companies are trying to combat with the rising cost of buying games and whatnot from a multiplayer standpoint is your free to play on massive multiplayer online games. only World of Warcraft can get away with subscription based now. I mean, and Eve. But you know, to be honest with you, Eve is such a weird game. When you can't compare it to World of Warcraft, you can't. And weird ass shit happens all the time in Eve that just make you go, holy crap! And then I want to play it again, and then I'll play for 7 months, and then I'm like, Eve is the perfect example of a game you can play while playing a game. Because when you jump 28 times, you can go upstairs, you can go to the bathroom, you can make yourself lunch, and when you get back, you still got 2 jumps to go. But the thing is that free-to-play MMOs are really working. And the reason is because you're allowing the users to actually sample. To be honest, actually, this is where I was going. Sorry, I completely went off into
We tend to do that.
Yeah. Once I start going, you gotta rein me in, or I'm gone. But one of the reasons why I think that this is a perfect time for the smaller games to really, you know, take a chunk of the market is because of the lower cost. And free-to-play RPGs are phenomenal simply because you're giving individuals the ability to play your game, and if it's good, and I sure hope it's good, they're going to buy shit when given a choice. One of the games is still in beta. It's called Card Hunters. It's a web-based game. It's basically my best estimation is it's sort of Magic the Gathering meets Dungeons and Dragons. But shit, I've already dropped $20 on that game. It's free, but I've already dropped $20 because I want to get deeper into that game. Same concept with free-to-play MMOs. If it's good enough and you hook the person, which is not really that hard, because video games are a phenomenal way of escapism. They allow individuals to become omnipotent, all-powerful. These heroes are these massive villains that they're either they can't legally do in public, or that they're too afraid of doing in public.
Well, from my standpoint, I'm going off tangent from Charlie, is one of the problems that companies are trying to work out with the free-to-play games is how do they not get some 13-year-old child, and I always go back to my 13-year-olds, to steal their parents' credit card and rack up a whole bunch of money. I think there was a story from England 2 or 3 years ago now where a kid spent $13,000 on his parents' credit cards on Farmville because their legal backing to say, are you 18 years, can you consent to this, was so simple to get through that the kid just kept racking up and the parents weren't paying attention to it, and then the company gets sued for, why were you letting my child buy this? And I think that's a whole other realm of these free-to-play things, is that these companies have to have huge legal teams to make sure that they have that CYA, the cover your ass, that they can get through this, so in case something like that happens, that they can make it through without completely being wiped out the planet. And then, once again, is Second Life still around? Have they officially closed that?
No, they're still there.
All right. Second Life was running into the problem whether if,
the
digital land, whether you own it or not, can you rent it out? Because people are literally making money.
They can rent it out, but the problem is that the big issue with Second Life is that if the servers were to ever go offline, and you've bought a shit ton of property, digital property, storefronts, whatever, do you get compensation for that land once it goes away? The answer is no. And that's actually another reason why I think that digital distribution and probably, unfortunately, cloud storage is going to be in the cards for all future consoles. Because, one, you don't have to pay the manufacturing fees, but also, yeah, you get to play the game until the company turns off the server. And it basically goes into, you're buying the ability to play this game, and now they're adding a little addendum saying, as long as we want you to play it. EA is terrible for turning off their servers every 2 years. If you have any sports game, like a Madden or basketball or whatever, let's see here, they're just bringing out 2014 college football to 2012 is now offline. They shut down they don't want you to continue to play. You and your buddies that could be the best game in the world to play online. But they're gonna turn it off. And I'm gonna go off on a tangent real quick.
We already are off on a tangent.
Whatever. EA, this is my interpretation of how EA basically makes it apparent that they've given you a new game, even though they haven't. For Madden, they've got a huge corkboard about the size of the screen. And on this corkboard, it's all these different football features. And they've got two darts. They've got the enhancement dart and the broken dart. The enhancement dart is the feature that's going to be enhanced this year. The broken dart is the one we're accidentally going to leave a couple lines of code out of, so that the following year, they'll fix that.
It's
and
better.
improve it, yeah.
But isn't all of that just symptomatic of a consumer-driven society? I mean, we are a society that makes things to deliberately break down.
Right, absolutely.
So that we have to buy new. And it's the
Absolutely.
same with the gaming industry.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and it also, because of the fact that we are a capitalistic society, we are basically programmed to want the latest and greatest thing. So, you know, there's so many people who will just buy the Call of Duty, whatever the new one is, Modern Warfare 4.
Is it Black Ops 3 this year?
Something like that. But they'll buy that simply because that is the newest one, and they in their mind, immediately when you put a new number or a different title or something at the end of the game, it's newer, so it's got to be better. That's the understanding. That's the programming we have.
Well, I think it's more than that. Call of Duty is a gaming thing that doesn't appeal to me at all.
Right.
And yet it's on my Steam wish list because the advertising and the promotion of it is
Right.
very
Phenomenal.
exciting,
Oh,
very
absolutely.
enticing, and
Yeah.
it just kind of draws me in.
And
That is the benefit of having a publisher
Yeah.
with such a big title.
I once learned from a friend of mine who did PR in the movie industry that the more the movie is promoted, actually the tendency for the worse the movie to be.
Yeah.
Because they know that if we don't pump this movie out, no one's going to go see it. So they put more promotion into the worst games. And for some reason, in the movies, and I tend to find that has been working more recently with the games, that the Call of Duties aren't getting any better. So they promote it more and more and more because they need people to buy it more and more. Originally, they could literally just put out the Call of Duty name and people would want it. But nowadays, they've got to put more promotion into it because they still have to keep that base up.
Well, and one of the tactics they're using is that they're putting TV stars and recognizable faces in all their commercials. So they're like, oh man.
It's very appealing.
Oh,
It is.
absolutely.
It's very
appealing.
Their marketing department is phenomenal.
It is not a kind of game that I would play at all.
Right.
And I'm very attracted
And
to
one of
it.
the things that they're really pushing is for younger people to buy it, and I guess the definition of hardcore gamer is changing, but people who play these games constantly may be considered hardcore gamers, but the only games they play are these games. And they push it like, I remember when Call of Duty Black Ops came out, one of the big things was it was a Walmart and it was two guys and maybe their early 40s talking about who got it first. You don't necessarily consider them hardcore gamers where they're doing tabletops and RPGs and they're going through all the indie games. This might be the only game they buy every year, that and maybe Madden, but that's who they were pushing to, these people who buy every year, maybe middle-aged gamers, teenagers, things like that. Not necessarily the hardcore gamers because they don't think they are people who play tabletops, who play games like Bastion, which are big indie hits or whatever, are going to buy it because they know they don't want that kind of game.
Well, you know, when you're speaking of gamers, I have to confess I'm not a gamer. I do play games, but I am not a gamer. I don't have that gamer mentality. I play because it's something to do. And I think that's where the two audiences are. There's the people who play Call of Duty because it's something to do, or they play WoW because it's something to do. And then there's these guys in here. And part of the attraction of this is that you're in the moment. It's not virtual, it's real. But I'm wondering if there isn't room for technology to grow for online gaming to take on that kind of in the moment where voice is integrated into the game, where you know when you're playing with a 13-year-old.
Well, I think to some extent we are there. I mean, the majority of the games have that voice support.
Not just voice support, but where you actually have to have it to have the complete gaming experience.
Right. To be honest with you, I think I think it's headed there, but I think that companies would be hesitant to do that because when you make a requirement of something that isn't mandatory for a system, it usually pops out. That's why a lot of the games that a lot of companies shied away from the iDraw, which was this very unique tablet that THQ made that was a third-party peripheral, and it flopped because only THQ was willing to do it and as well as the Kinect, because the Kinect wasn't standard on the Xbox 360 when it first came out, so a lot of games shied away from that. If you require voice, it's going to drive people away because some people don't ever want to talk. It's unfortunate.
I absolutely think we are there. I think we were there the minute the Kinect came out. When two people have the Kinect and they got the camera, they can automatically put their face up there and they can talk through it. I think companies are hesitant to do it because gamers may not want it. People tend to be more willing to chat and discuss when they are anonymous. And I think when you put that out there, that their face is on the screen and you can see them,
or their actual voice,
that they are less likely to do it. Charlie has a great shirt. I don't remember where he got it from, but it's saying like,
it's Penny Arcade.
It's Penny Arcade.
It's the Jonathan Gabriel fuckwad internet theory, where basically you give any person the ability of going online in anonymity, and they turn into a complete jackass. Because of the fact that you can hide. When you actually start putting your face or your voice to something, you're a lot more hesitant to actually do it. Which to be honest with you, I would love for that to happen because I want people to actually own up to some of the stuff they say.
But in the true gamer mentality, anonymity loses importance, doesn't it? I mean,
it depends on the situation. Some people view games, like you said, just to pass the time or to escape. And so in order to escape, they don't want anything of them to be portrayed through their character.
I think part of the catch is there is no true gamer mentality.
Right. That's
just like it's what each person brings.
Absolutely.
I've just noticed differences in people who call themselves gamers. And I don't want to call them hardcore gamers because it makes them sound removed from reality, but there are people who take it seriously enough. It's not just a pastime, it's not just a hobby, it's a way of life, it's a way of understanding life, it's a way of promoting ideals in the real world that you get from these heroic tasks that you take on in gaming.
Right.
Those kind of people, don't they dominate the gaming world? Don't they kind of no? So it's really just
it used to be. I would say it used to be, especially from the video game world. At the beginning, core gamers, because that's the phrase I've been hearing in the industry a lot. Less hardcore, just more core gamer.
Right.
Core gamers did, but as this has gone bigger and bigger, there's really, if you want to use the term gamer, everyone's a gamer.
Yeah.
If you play Angry Birds, you're a gamer. If you play on WoW, you're a gamer.
So in other words, the people who actually brought about the explosion in the industry, that the explosion has just kind of become commercialized, right?
I would say it's been commercialized. I mean, when you can't define what a gamer is anymore because everybody's playing something or other, and I don't think you can get more commercialized than a lot of these big name games. I mean, I have Angry Birds on my phone. I play Angry Birds all the time. I love the simplicity that Angry Birds gives you. But when you talk about commercialized, Angry Birds, Call of Duty, God of War, because they create specialized systems for God of War. things, whenever they start going beyond just the game, they start selling action figures and maps and books and stories. I feel that is becoming commercialized. Angry Birds has a television show somewhere or other. That's commercial.
Is that commercialized, or is that just the growth of an IP? It's kind of the same thing, and I think for gamers, it may just be that the word gamer is not commercialized. It's the term is no longer useful.
That's a good way of putting it.
Actually, I don't know if it'd be. I think a funny thing happened when before this explosion of everybody basically, if you play some sort of game, be it casual or whatever, being called a gamer. When it was just like the Nintendos or the Segas or whatever, gamers they felt misunderstood. No one understood them. Why can't people understand that about games and whatnot? And then this explosion happened. Now everyone's considered gamers. Now you've lost that uniqueness of that moniker, and now we're pissed off because now you don't understand. You don't understand what being a gamer is. Why would you think that that you're a gamer? Now we're trying to exclude people instead of include people.
But this is an issue that we see beyond just gamers.
Oh, absolutely.
We see this through all of fandom.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think some of it is very much, I have to hate something.
Right, absolutely.
So therefore, you are the source of my hate. But even beyond that, that's outside of fandom. That's
Right.
in many parts of our life nowadays.
Oh,
yeah.
People want to find something to rail against and argue against.
That's. I mean, just look at your local news.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be some kind of death and mayhem for someone to get pissed off at, or somebody did something. I mean, if everyone was getting along and holding hands, the media industry would die.
But I think back to the point that you had, I just think the term's different.
Yeah.
Gamer is very broad across everything.
Is it possible that what we're actually in is a trending kind of mode, and that all of this will die down at some point and will return to the original?
I think we're past the point.
I think personally it'll trend to something neat.
Yeah.
I think the point where it's very common to have, Fortune 500 CEOs while they're on a plane playing Angry Birds, I think that's going to be a neat place when we're at that con. I think you're always going to have those people that want a very in-depth experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I even think that's a scale. If you look at RPGs, because you mentioned RPGs, there's an old discussion that's been going on for years about types of players. And you have everything from the people that are very into the system, or people that just care about the story, to the people that are there because, I get to hang out with my friends at night, and I kind of role play, but I really just enjoy being with them. And for the RPG industry, there's articles upon articles written about these types of players. I think you're going to see the same thing, and you see the same thing in the video game industry. I play WoW every night for 10 hours, and I'm head of a guild raid, or I run this. I get on and I talk with my mom as we're playing Candy Crush. It's all different spectrums.
What I would like to see, and really when we get back to our whole thing of the destruction of the game industry is we're changing. What I would like to see is that a lot of these people who play Angry Birds in line or Candy Crush maybe want to expand on what they're playing and try something new, and maybe they'll have already the console online, they'll look for one of these cheap $7 or $8 games and they'll expand. That's what I would like to see and see things.
I think you
towards
can
that.
see that, but I think part of the catch there, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, one of the big things having a publisher gives you, you said they take 70 or 80%. Yeah, but if you then ask, well, what do they do with that 70, 80%? They don't keep all of it.
No.
There's a chunk that goes to building the logistics path.
Yeah.
There's a big chunk in there for marketing. Part of the catch is there may be great indie games out there, and there are.
Yeah.
If I'm an indie producer, I gotta advertise, and most of the time, I'm not good at it. I'm
Yeah.
not good at marketing
And that's why you
and
need
getting my
publishers.
name out there. So there are these diamonds in the rough, and we find them all the time on Steam. It's like, oh, this is a phenomenal game. Well, it would be nice to know when it came out 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Brave was a good example of that for me.
Yeah, I just hope that some of these big, little iPhone games, Candy Crush, whatever, Angry Birds, I've never played in my life. Hopefully those people that play those will expand and say, hey, I really like this game, what else is there out there? And that's what I would like to see, is that they move beyond those.
But the question is, how can they do that?
That's true.
Right.
Yeah,
It takes it takes not only new platforms and pay scales and whatnot, but it does take additional voices. And you're right, a publisher for marketing purposes is phenomenal because they've got a huge devoted group of people. That's all they do is market. They'll take pieces of art and jazz it up, throw it in magazines. They'll throw it on TV. Well, they're not really throwing it in magazines anymore because the printed word is basically done. Unfortunately, it kills me. But you're right. And it could even be just banners on the website. Though when you go to the internet, it's a little bit easier for those. If the independent people have any marketing sense, it is a little bit easier to get their word out.
It may be easier, but it still needs man hours. And if you're an indie team where you've got 5 employees, and 2 of your artists, 2 of your audio guys, and 2 of your programmers, you don't have the extra man hours to have someone do marketing. Where a publisher, on the other hand, this is the marketing department. This is all we do day to day.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So basically, you're right. When you have a publisher, unfortunately, you take some of the ability to innovate and to be original, to basically be able to push your product.
It's almost interesting. There's almost a niche market out there now for an indie publisher.
Right.
That aren't, we're a publishing house that specifically specializes in indie, and while we may not be able to fund you, we can handle the other side of what the publisher needs to do.
Right.
We have a marketing team that will handle Facebook, we have a customer support team that will take that bit off of you, and they provide us an outsourced niche market.
Yep.
For your listening to the video, that would be like that.
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, unfortunately, if you want to market your game and you want an indie marketing company, you need to go out and find them. Because right now, we don't make games, but on a weekly basis, I'm getting emails from marketing companies going, hey, we'll market your next game. I'm like, I don't make games. So there's a lot of people out there who understand that there is a niche market that needs to start to grow because of the fact that a lot of people are trying to put out independent projects. First of all, if you're trying to get a game, if you're trying to make a name, or hell, just get into the video game industry, you have to have a finished product in your portfolio. If you don't, then you're starting at the mailer. They no longer want to see concepts or ideas. They want to see finished projects. So you've got all these people who are, unfortunately, there's probably some people who are honest and amazing people who are emailing the shit out of everyone, but there's a lot of vultures out there. And so you've got to be extra careful because one of the examples I like to throw out there is, it's not video games, but the webcomic Penny Arcade. When they did their first book, when they signed that contract, they accidentally wrote away their rights to the entire universe. And it was thankfully because they have a business manager who came in afterwards and goes, whoa, what the hell did you just do? And he was able to backtrack it so they could continue to do the comic. Because their first book, actually, they wrote it away. So, unfortunately, when you get with the indie people, I would love to see these, honest marketing people, honest marketing groups that are able to help push the indie agenda and get recognized on the iOS, on the Android, on Ouya, on Xbox Live Arcade. Though, that's going to change for Xbox One, PlayStation 4. But if you go down that route, now you're going to need a legal advisor. Unfortunately. Thankfully, I have a lawyer in the family, so.
Basically, everybody needs a legal advisor at some point along the road when you run these businesses. I mean, there's just no way around it. Anything else?
What time is it?
We got 20 minutes.
All right, let's talk. Let's just go around the room. What was your first true gaming love?
No, you'll laugh.
Go for it. I'm not gonna laugh.
RuneScape. done any kind of gaming, and then someone introduced me to racing. And I found the whole environment just amazingly enjoyable.
Awesome. What was your first favorite game? Checkers. An easy game.
See, that's what I'm talking
actually,
about
it's a
on
lot harder.
expanding. See, that's what I'm talking about on expanding. Starting with checkers, and you work your way slowly up. Then you're moving on to Monopoly. Once you get into Monopoly, you're on to life.
You know, actually, I read an article, I'm sorry, I'm going on a quick tangent here, that the vast majority of people who play Monopoly are playing it wrong. Because every single time you land on the property, you can actually bid on that property.
Oh, really?
Yes. Fun little fact. Sir, first.
Played Star Fox 64 against him.
First game,
It was the first game you beat me at, and the last one we beat me at too.
So you're saying that you have now outclassed him all video games. Very nice.
Non-computer, Conway's Game of Life, computer, Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate. There's only one thing I have to say to you for that. You must gather your party before venturing forth. I hated that. Son of a bitch, you stuck behind a barrel again? Hold on, let me go walk all the way back up there. Yes, sir.
Well, that's a kind of tricky question. This game, I remember playing it knowing that, hey, this is a video game. And, you know, what we cost for it was Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racing. That was great.
Pod racing. Sir. The original? Not just Mario Brothers, but Super Mario Brothers. A lot of people don't know that there was a Mario Brothers before Super Mario Brothers. That one was just a pipe game that you get to play and. Oh man, what the heck is the game that you get to actually play that pipe game?
Hey, how's it going? You can't see all of us. Wait, that's what I'm doing.
all I know is that we're at a funny time for video games because I duck hunt. I remember thinking I aimed at that duck. Why did I not hit it? Because it wasn't necessarily I felt accurate. But we've been playing for so long that I would consider myself a gamer. But then when I look at the fact that there are people who are way more gamer than I am because my fiance wants to spend time with me in our house.
Are you saying my wife doesn't want to spend time with me?
Yes. I'm just
So Duck Hunt was your first one.
first, but we're at a period where people have been playing for at least video games for now 30 years. And people who are in their 40s play video games when they're 10, and they've been playing it basically their entire lives. Not just, oh, I'm 25 and I'm now starting to play Super Mario Bros.
I have to say my first one has to be Super Mario Bros. 3. I mean, I played a bunch of games before that, but doing the word whistle and also seeing the movie The Wizard, holy shit. I wanted to play that game so bad. And then if it was not console based, I have to go with Dungeons and Dragons. Excuse me, Dungeons and Dragons version 2. Which I quickly, after like the first couple campaigns, I quit because I got sick and tired of trying to figure out that cover. Because that's crazy actually.
That level's minimum, really.
Okay. All right, we got 15 minutes. So, do we have any questions? Just me.
Well, the title of the panel is intriguing, the destruction of the game industry as we know it. And my first question was, is this a good thing or a bad thing? So,
Okay, so to sum it up, the destruction of the game industry as we know it has the potential to be phenomenal. But there is still a lot of room for it to go to a very, oh my gosh, a very cookie cutter way, and you know, basically, my true fear is seeing innovation completely die. And you know, if we end up just having Halo 37 and Madden 2045 and the Call of Duty, where we basically only have 20 franchises and that's it, that's possible. Because games are going to continue to increase in cost on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, any of the iterations. That's why I'm a huge proponent of all these independent games. Like, well, iOS and the Android, the bite-sized games. And I hope that they always stick around because there's always the ability of one of those being picked up and new blood being introduced into this system that's, to be honest with you, is getting a lot smaller by the day. I mean, their studios closing at a rapid pace that's never been seen before. Unfortunately now, you make one bad game and you're out. There's no room for error anymore.
Well, and see, and that's what I think is a problem all over every market, because we're very judgmental society.
Oh yeah.
And if you can't make it the first time, we don't want you there.
Yep.
But one of the things while I find multiple player platforms remarkable, I personally have trouble playing in them because of the multiple personalities that you meet, even in a single player. Do you see us going more towards more multiplayer, or do you see, because I don't find enough single games.
Right, well, I think,
Single player games.
I think, to be honest with you, I think the market is completely geared towards multiplayer games when it comes to like your console or your PC because of the fact that you have the ability for the social aspect. I think it is truly a terrible thing that a lot of these games with multiplayer aspects or components have now basically made the single player the tutorial. I think that's a grave injustice because there are people out there who love the franchise or love the story and want to actually delve into it, but you give them 3 hours of single player, then you're thrust into a terribly structured multiplayer ladder system.
And it's a difficult area to cross.
Oh, absolutely.
For some personalities.
Right. I mean, for me, I play a lot of games that have multiplayer on it, but I almost never touch the multiplayer simply because I want to have that intimate experience with the game. I don't want to share it.
That's what I want. I want
Yeah.
that and this is why I don't call myself a gamer, because
Right.
so many times I miss that. I'm so worried. When it comes to any game, even if it's just Bejeweled 2, I am a slow and awkward player.
Yeah.
And as soon as you get me around other people who know the game, they've already been through the dungeon,
Right.
they've already done the quest, and I'm falling into holes, I'm getting lost.
Right.
And I miss that one of the things I love about RuneScape, and I played with a person that I found and I played, I would say, oh, beautiful flowers as we were walking through these places. And he was like the only person I've ever met in my life who could appreciate
Right.
the environment that we were in. But everybody else, it's like, no, we just got to get through it. And I'm not that kind of player. I want to experience it, the
Right.
intimacy, like you said.
Well, to be honest with you, there is one game that comes to mind that is so intimate and so gut-wrenching that I've only been able to play it once. I believe Jesse played it twice, and that is Heavy Rain for the PlayStation 3. It is a single-player experience, but my God, was I invested in it. And I can't do it. Look, there's 5 characters. I had all 5 until the end and lost 3 of them right at the end. And I was so emotionally invested in every single one of those characters. By the way, real quick, Heavy Rain is a game where you start off with 5 characters. If one of those characters dies, that character storyline basically just stops. Because you'll play one character at a time. And you're basically trying to find an infamous killer called the Origami Killer, who basically murders people and then leaves an origami crane next to him. And you're playing as 5 different individuals, and there is many times where your character could die, but the game will go on. And so for me, I was so emotionally invested. I kept all 5 of them alive. I am trucking. I missed the triangle for one, he died. I missed the circle for another, she died. And then the ending is completely geared towards whoever survives. And God, it was gut-wrenching. But that intimate experience was just amazing, and the amount of time that you spent with those characters, learning their little, nuances and stuff. I want more of that, but unfortunately, everybody, the vast majority, I'm going to tell you, the vast majority of the market wants these quick pace games where you can jump in, jump out. They don't want to put that big of a time investment in it. To me, it's sad.
It's very sad we lose something. The last compelling game I've seen, and I'm not going to say I'm not a gamer, I don't get exposed to a lot of games, but my children, Ando is my son-in-law, and my daughter Katie May, and my son, they all turn me on to certain games. I don't know how to say it, Deus Ex?
Deus Ex.
Deus Ex, okay. I found that to be quite a compelling game, but the characters themselves were so, the story alone is what compelled me, but the characters were so flat. It was difficult but that was the last time I felt like I was involved in something,
Right. Well, it
I
is.
miss that. I miss
Right.
that.
It's more about, unfortunately, it's more about the violence than the actual character that you're playing now.
Yeah.
You basically have your stereotypical character in a lot of the games that you play. The most popular franchise or theme right now is zombies. So you've got your, you got to have a ditzy girl in there. You've got to have your token black guy. You've got to have a grizzly old veteran who just wants to be left alone. Yeah, exactly.
My children.
It's unfortunate. But the problem is that not a lot of people really love the story. They just want something quick. The guy who's missing from our group, he is terrible about reading dialogue. He doesn't really want to know. He just wants to go on to the next action. So.
And I'm all about story. I love a really good in-depth story, and I really like being immersed into a world and having something unfold with depth of character and depth of story. So
what epitomized my experience with RuneScape was, another thing I love to do is to explore. And as she was exploring, she found this little cabin very remote in the game, and she went in, and this guy says he's a library, and why don't you go over here and take this book off the shelf. And when I pulled the book off, it was all about my character's exploits in the world of RuneScape. And I cried. I'm just a wuss, I know, but it meant something to me because everybody I had met in that game, every experience, every good thing I'd done, every time I helped someone, it meant something to me personally. Is it time to go?
No, we've got
5 minutes.
We got 5 minutes. Just give us the 5. No, and we're very aware. We've been checking our phones constantly. Since we got you in the room, what was your first love in gaming?
Video gaming specifically?
Doesn't matter. What basically said, I want to play more games?
I think that it was probably a combination of Mario and Link. Mario was, of course, the first platformer that I got into because it was the first game for NES, and I got an NES pretty early on, and then I saw a cousin of mine playing the first Legend of Zelda, and I asked him if I could try, and he said no, that I was too young to play it. So it became a quest to become mature enough to play Legend of Zelda. And from those two characters, it just flew.
Cool.
We have 5 minutes, and I can wrap up really quickly.
Then wrap. Go for it. Just be
The
honest.
video game industry is going through a big change. You talk about, is it going to be a good thing or a bad thing? And I think over the history of video games, within really the last now 50 years almost, 45 years of video games, they go through these revolutions. And I would say the last big one was in '96 when they started having more 3D games coming out with the N64, and they had more 3D games. Now we're getting into a period where basically everybody that's playing has internet capabilities, and companies want to use these to their fullest extent. So you're going to see more multiplayer, and how these companies work within this new internet realm where they can put online games on their cell phones, and people are always being inundated with it, will really be interesting. And really, we've only been at it for now, what, 3 years, would you say? 4 years of having true internet gaming being always with us. Well, I guess the first iPhone came out, what, 2007 now is the first iPhone? So maybe now we've been at it 7 years. And there's my phone going off, telling me something from ESPN. It's always with us, and I think it's still too early in this history of this revolution to know where it's going, and we may not know where it's going for another 10 or 15 years, because that's just kind of how history works, is when you're living it, you can't see where it's going. And hopefully when we run our website and these panels, it gives people at least something to think about after they leave, to kind of think about, what am I playing and what are we doing?
I just want to, since we're almost out of time, I just want to put one thing out here. Of course, we're going to, we'll definitely say, come to our website, but support your indie game developers. If you want something different besides Madden 20 bajillion and Call of Duty 3500, the innovation is within the independents right now, and they would love to have your support and your attention. I know that they don't get a lot of media coverage, but if you look just a little bit, you can find some amazing things, and it could be the next Angry Birds. And but if you don't give it a chance, you'll never find out. So thank you for coming, and we'll be around, and of course I'll be here because I'm going to be videotaping